Back when I was 21, I used to work closing shifts at a grocery store in a small town in northern Pennsylvania. My shift ended at midnight almost every night, and because I lived about 40 minutes away, I spent a lot of time driving alone on empty roads. There was one road in particular I always hated taking. It cut through a long wooded area with almost no streetlights for miles. During the winter, fog would settle low across the pavement, making it almost impossible to see ahead. One Friday night in December, I left work later than usual. It was around 12:45 a.m. by the time I got onto the back road. The weather was awful. Dense fog rolled across the road in waves, and my headlights barely reached 10 feet ahead of me. I remember gripping the steering wheel tightly because the road curved constantly. The radio kept fading in and out with static. At one point, I actually considered turning around and taking the highway instead. But my phone battery was almost dead, and I didn't want to waste more time. About 15 minutes into the drive, I noticed something ahead. At first, I thought it was a mailbox, then it moved. I slowed down immediately. Standing on the side of the road was a woman wearing what looked like a long white nightgown. Her dark hair covered most of her face, and she wasn't moving at all. I remember feeling confused more than scared at first. Who the hell stands outside alone in freezing weather at 1 in the morning? As I got closer, I could see she was barefoot. That instantly made my stomach tighten. I slowed almost to a stop beside her and cracked my window slightly. "Miss, are you okay?" No response. She just stood there with her head tilted downward. I noticed her arms looked scratched up badly. Dirt covered the front of her gown. I said, "Do you need help?" Then slowly, she lifted her head. I still get chills thinking about her face. Her eyes looked wide open, almost unnaturally wide, not blinking, just staring directly at me. And she smiled. Not a normal smile either. It stretched too far across her face. Every instinct in my body told me to drive away immediately. Then she spoke, very quietly. "There's someone in the back seat." My heart nearly stopped. I turned instantly toward my rearview mirror. Nothing. When I looked back toward the woman, she had stepped closer to my car without me noticing. Now she was only a few feet from my window. I quickly rolled the window up fully and locked the doors. That was when she suddenly started laughing. Not loud, soft laughing, like she knew something I didn't. I hit the gas and sped away. My pulse was pounding so hard I could barely breathe. I kept checking the mirrors every few seconds, expecting to see headlights behind me or someone sitting in my back seat, but there was nothing. About 5 minutes later, I finally started calming down. Then my radio suddenly cut to static again. A voice came through the speakers, not clearly, but enough. It sounded like whispering. I reached to turn the radio off completely. That's when I noticed something in the mirror, in the darkness behind me. A shape. Someone sitting in the back seat directly behind me. I slammed on the brakes so hard the car skidded sideways. I jumped out onto the road immediately, nearly falling into the ditch. The back door of my car slowly creaked open. I stared at it from the freezing roadside, terrified. Nothing came out. After almost a full minute, I forced myself closer. My entire body was shaking. I grabbed the flashlight from my glove compartment and pointed it inside. The back seat was empty, completely empty, but there was mud everywhere. Wet footprints covered the floor behind the driver's seat. Bare footprints. I drove home faster than I ever had in my life. The next morning, I convinced myself it had all been paranoia from exhaustion. Until later that afternoon, I was cleaning out my car when I noticed something tucked beneath the back seat, a dirty photograph. The picture showed that same road at night, and standing near the tree, was the woman. On the back of the photo were 4 words written in faded black ink. "You should have stayed." I never took that road again. In 2018, I worked as a delivery driver for a small medical company in Ohio. Most deliveries happened during the day, but sometimes I had overnight routes between towns. One night around 2 a.m., I was driving down a nearly abandoned highway after dropping supplies off at a hospital. The road stretched for miles without another car in sight. No gas stations, no houses, nothing. I remember feeling exhausted. I had been awake almost 20 hours. That's probably why I almost didn't notice him. A man standing near the shoulder of the highway, waving both arms. I slowed down carefully. He looked middle-aged, wearing a dark jacket and jeans. His clothes were dirty, like he'd been walking for hours. I rolled my window down halfway. "You okay?" He nodded quickly. "My truck broke down a few miles back. Phone's dead. Could you take me to the next town?" I hesitated. Normally, I never picked people up, but he looked genuinely desperate. So against my better judgment, I unlocked the passenger door. The second he got inside, the temperature in the truck seemed to drop. I know that sounds dramatic, but it's true. The air suddenly felt freezing cold. The man sat stiffly with his hands folded in his lap. "Thanks," he muttered. His voice sounded strange, dry and raspy. I asked where he was headed. He just pointed ahead. For several minutes we drove in silence. Then I noticed something weird. He never blinked, not once. He stared straight ahead the entire time. Eventually I tried making conversation again. "You from around here?" No answer. I glanced toward him, but that's when I realized something that made my chest tighten instantly. His eyes looked wrong. At first I thought it was shadows from the dashboard lights. But when I focused harder, I realized he didn't have eyes at all, just dark, empty sockets. I nearly swerved off the road. The man slowly turned his head toward me and smiled. "You shouldn't look at me while driving," he whispered. I slammed the brakes hard. The truck skidded onto the gravel shoulder. I threw my door open and stumbled out, panicking. But when I looked back inside, the passenger seat was empty, completely empty. The door on his side was still closed. I stood there, breathing heavily, trying to understand what had just happened. Then I heard knocking, 3 soft knocks, from the back cargo area of the truck. I froze. The cargo section only held sealed medical boxes. Slowly another knock came, then another. I remember backing away from the truck entirely. Every horror movie instinct told me not to open those doors. But curiosity eventually got the better of me. I walked toward the rear carefully. My hands shook so badly I could barely grab the handle. The moment I opened the doors, nothing was there, just boxes stacked normally. I laughed nervously from relief. Then I heard breathing behind me, right beside my ear, heavy breathing. I spun around instantly. Nobody, but in the reflection of the truck's metal door, I saw the man standing several feet behind me, still smiling, still missing his eyes. I turned around again, nothing there. At that point, I jumped back into the truck and sped away. I didn't stop until I reached the next town. I told myself I was hallucinating from exhaustion. But a week later, something happened that changed my mind. One of the older workers at the company overheard me talking about the experience. His face went pale immediately. Then he asked me what highway I'd been driving on. After I told him, he got quiet for a long moment. Then he said there used to be a truck driver years ago who crashed there late at night after picking up a hitchhiker. The driver died instantly. When police found the body, his eyes were missing. Nobody ever figured out why. Before leaving work that night, the older guy stopped me near the door. He looked completely serious, and he said something I'll never forget. "If you ever see him again, don't let him into the vehicle twice." About 3 years ago, I was driving home from my cousin's birthday party around midnight. I lived in a quiet rural area outside a small town in Kentucky, and the roads there were mostly long stretches of farmland with occasional woods. At first, the drive was normal. Then I noticed headlights behind me. That wasn't unusual by itself, but after about 20 minutes I realized the same car was still there. Every turn I made, they made too. I started feeling uneasy. The car stayed far enough back that I couldn't clearly see the driver, but close enough that I constantly noticed the headlights in my mirrors. I decided to test it. Instead of taking the normal road toward my house, I turned down a random side road. The car followed. At that point, my stomach dropped. I sped up slightly. So did they. I remember checking my phone, thinking about calling someone, but I had almost no signal out there. The road became narrower and darker the farther I drove. Trees closed in tightly around both sides. The only light came from my headlights and the glowing beams behind me. Then suddenly the car behind me flashed their high beams repeatedly, over and over. I panicked. I thought maybe they were trying to run me off the road. So I accelerated harder. The other car immediately sped up too. Soon I was flying down the road way faster than I should have been. Branches scraped against the sides of my car as the road twisted through the woods. Then something terrifying happened. The car behind me suddenly disappeared. No headlights, nothing. I looked everywhere in the mirrors. Gone. I actually felt relieved for a moment, until my headlights passed over something ahead. A car parked sideways across the road, blocking it completely. My blood went cold. The same headlights turned on again. Whoever had been following me somehow got ahead of me. I slammed the brakes just in time. For a second, everything was silent. Then, the driver's door of the other car slowly opened. A tall man stepped out. Even from a distance, something about him felt wrong. He moved strangely, almost twitchy. He started walking toward my car slowly. I threw mine into reverse immediately, but the road behind me was narrow, and I almost slid into a ditch, trying to turn around. The man kept approaching calmly. Then I saw something else. There was another person sitting in the passenger seat of his car, watching me. Neither of them said a word. I finally managed to spin my car around and hit the gas. The tires screamed against the pavement as I sped away. I kept expecting them to chase me, but they didn't. At least, not immediately. About 10 minutes later, I reached a gas station near town and pulled in fast. My hands were trembling so badly I could barely unlock my phone. I told the clerk what happened, and he looked concerned enough to call police. While we waited, I stood near the window watching outside. Then the clerk suddenly went pale. "Is that them?" I looked outside. Across the street, parked beneath a dead streetlight, was the same car, engine running, watching the gas station. Police arrived a few minutes later, but the car drove off before officers could reach it. I thought that would be the end of it. But 2 nights later, I woke up around 3 a.m. because of a strange sound outside my house. A slow crunching noise, like footsteps on gravel. I looked through my bedroom window carefully and nearly screamed. That same car sat parked at the end of my driveway with its headlights off. The tall man stood beside it, staring directly at my house, completely motionless. I called police immediately, but by the time they arrived, the car was gone. The officer searched around my property with a flashlight. A few minutes later, he called me outside. Near the side of my house, beneath my bedroom window, were muddy footprints, and placed carefully on the ground beside them was a photograph. A picture of me sitting inside my car at the gas station that night, taken from outside the window. On the back were the words, "Almost got you." I moved less than a month later, and sometimes late at night when I'm driving alone, I still notice headlights following me for a little too long.